The rain came down hard that November evening. Buckingham Palace glowed under the streetlights. But inside the security checkpoint, something felt wrong. James Harrington had worked palace security for 12 years. He knew every protocol. He knew every face. And he knew when something didn't belong. The black Range Rover pulled up to gate. 7 at 9:47 p.m. Standard procedure. The driver rolled down the window. It was Martin, one of the senior royal drivers. Behind him sat Queen Camilla, returning from a private engagement in Surrey. James approached with his flashlight. He nodded respectfully. Martin handed over the clearance papers. Everything looked normal, but then James heard it. A soft rustling from the back seat, like paper being moved. Hurried, nervous, he stepped back and glanced through the rear window. Queen Camilla sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. But beside her on the seat was a large black duffel bag. Unzipped, and inside, bundles of cash. Stacks of 50-pound notes held together with rubber bands. James felt his chest tighten. His training kicked in. He leaned down to the driver's window again. "Sir, I need to conduct a routine inspection." Martin's face went pale. "It's Her Majesty." "Surely that's not necessary. It's protocol, sir." The silence in the car was thick. Queen Camilla turned her head slightly. Her expression was unreadable, calm, but her fingers gripped the edge of her coat. James opened the rear door. The smell of leather and perfume filled the air. He shined his light on the duffel bag. There had to be tens of thousands of pounds inside. "Maybe more, ma'am," he said carefully. "May I ask what this is?" She didn't answer right away. Her eyes met his. There was something in them. Not fear, not guilt. Something else. "It's a personal matter," she said quietly. James swallowed hard. He knew what he had to do. "Even for a queen, I'll need to report this, ma'am." Her jaw tightened. "I understand." 20 minutes later, James sat in the security office, his hands shaking as he typed the incident report. His supervisor stood behind him, reading over his shoulder. "You're sure about this?" The supervisor asked. "I saw it with my own eyes." "Do you know what this means?" "An inquiry into the Queen Consort?" James nodded. He didn't want this, but he had taken an oath. By midnight, the report had reached the head of palace security. By morning, it was on the desk of the Metropolitan Police's Special Investigations Unit. And by noon, the media caught wind of something big. Reporters gathered outside the palace gates. Cameras flashed. Questions were shouted. But no one had answers yet. Inside, behind closed doors, Queen Camilla sat across from two investigators. Her lawyer beside her, the black duffel bag on the table between them. One of the investigators leaned forward. His voice was steady but firm. "Your Majesty, we need to know where this money came from." She looked at the bag, then at him, and for the first time in her life, she wondered if the truth would be enough to save her. The investigation room was cold. Bare walls. A single window overlooking the Thames. Queen Camilla had never been in a place like this before. Detective Inspector. Claire Ashford sat across from her, experienced, sharp. She had handled fraud cases, money laundering, even organized crime. But never anything like this. "Let's start simple," Claire said. "Where were you coming from last night?" "A charity event," Camilla replied. Her voice was steady. "In Guildford. A fundraiser for hospice care, and the money." Camilla hesitated. Her lawyer, Richard Pemberton, touched her arm gently. "A signal. Be careful. It was a donation," she said finally. "From the event?" Claire wrote something down. She didn't look up. 73,000 pounds in cash? From a single event, it was a successful evening. Most charities use bank transfers nowadays, checks, digital payments. Why cash? You'd have to ask the organizers. Claire leaned back. She studied Camilla's face, looking for cracks, signs of dishonesty. But the Queen Consort had spent decades in the public eye. She knew how to hold her composure. "Who gave you the bag?" "A representative from the charity." "A woman named Helen Marsh. Do you have her contact information?" My staff would have it. Claire nodded to her partner, Detective Sergeant Tom Briggs, who sat in the corner. He left the room to make calls. The silence that followed was heavy. Camilla looked at the window. Rain streaked down the glass. Outside, London moved on. Buses, taxis, people living their ordinary lives. She wondered if hers would ever feel ordinary again. "Your Majesty," Claire said softly, "I want to believe you. But you have to understand how this looks. A member of the royal family. Unexplained cash. No documentation. It raises questions. I have nothing to hide. Then help me understand." Camilla's fingers traced the edge of the table. She thought about the previous night. The event had been small, intimate, 50 guests at most. Helen Marsh had approached her near the end. A quiet woman in her 60s. Tired eyes, grateful smile. "Your Majesty, this is for the hospice. Cash donations from tonight. We wanted you to deliver it personally. It means more that way," Camilla had accepted without thinking. It seemed like a gesture of trust, a sign of respect. Now it felt like a trap. Tom returned to the room. He whispered something to Claire. Her expression shifted. "Just slightly. We've spoken to the charity," Claire said. "They confirmed the event, but they say the total cash collected was £12,000. Not 73,000. Camilla's breath caught. "That's impossible. They have records, receipts, 12,000. So where did the rest come from?" The room seemed to shrink. Camilla felt the walls closing in. Her mind raced. Had Helen lied? Had someone planted the money? Or was there something she didn't know? Richard spoke up. "My client has cooperated fully. She was given that bag in good faith. If there's a discrepancy, it's not her responsibility. With respect, Mr. Pemberton, it became her responsibility the moment it was in her possession." Claire opened a folder. Inside were photographs, the duffel bag, the stacks of cash, and something else. A small slip of paper tucked between the notes. She slid it across the table. Camilla picked it up. Her hands trembled. It was a handwritten message, just for words. "For services rendered. Always. No signature." No explanation. "Do you know what this means?" Claire asked. Camilla stared at the paper. Her throat felt tight. "No." "Have you ever provided services to anyone outside your royal duties? Private consulting? Favors?" "Absolutely not." "Then who would write this? And why?" Camilla didn't answer. She couldn't. Because deep down, a terrible thought had begun to form. A name she hadn't heard in years. A man she had tried to forget. And if he was involved, everything was about to get much worse. The name came to her in the middle of the night. Victor Hale. Camilla sat in her private chambers at Clarence House, unable to sleep. The clock read 3:17 a.m. The city was quiet outside. But her mind was loud with memories. Victor Hale had been a businessman, wealthy, connected. Back in the late 90s, before she married Charles, he had approached her at a gala. Charming, persuasive. He had wanted her endorsement for a luxury hotel venture. Nothing formal. Just her presence at an opening. Photo. A few words. She had declined. Politely, but firmly. He hadn't taken it well. "You'll regret this," he had said. His smile hadn't reached his eyes. "People like me don't forget." She had dismissed it at the time. Thought he was simply a bitter man. But now, 25 years later, those words echoed. Could he be behind this? The next morning, Camilla told Richard everything. They sat in his office near Westminster. Rain tapped against the window. He listened without interrupting. "If Hale is involved," Richard said finally, "this could be a setup. A deliberate attempt to damage your reputation. But why now? After all these years, revenge doesn't have an expiration date. Especially for men like him." Richard made some calls. Discreet inquiries. By late afternoon, he had information. Victor Hale was still alive. 78 years old. Living in Monaco. Still wealthy. Still connected. And according to financial records, he had recently transferred large sums of money to various accounts in the UK. One of those accounts, Richard said, Belongs to a woman named Helen Marsh. Camilla felt her stomach drop. The woman who gave me the bag. Exactly. The pieces were falling into place. But it didn't make sense. If Hale wanted revenge, why involve her in something criminal? What did he gain? There's more, Richard said. He hesitated. The Metropolitan Police are expanding the investigation. They're looking into your financial records. Your staff. Anyone who might have had access to that money, they think I'm guilty. They think someone is. And right now, you're the easiest target. Camilla stood and walked to the window. Outside, protesters had gathered. Small signs. Angry faces. Royal corruption. No one is above the law. She had spent decades rebuilding her public image, earning respect, proving herself. And now, with one bag of cash, it was all crumbling. That evening, Claire Ashford sat in her office reviewing the case. Something didn't add up. The money, the note. Helen Marsh's connection to Victor Hale. She pulled up old records. Hale had been investigated twice before. Once in 2003 for tax evasion. Once in 2011 for bribery. Both times the cases were dropped. Insufficient evidence, but there was a pattern. He targeted people in power. Used their reputations against them. Planted evidence. Created scandals. And then, when they were desperate, he offered them a way out. For a price, Claire picked up her phone. She called Tom. I need you to find Helen Marsh. Now. We've been trying. She's disappeared. What do you mean disappeared? Her flat in Guildford is empty. Neighbors say she left 2 days ago. No forwarding address. Claire's pulse quickened. Get me everything on Victor Hale. Travel records. Phone records. Bank statements. I want to know every move he's made in the last 6 months. She hung up. Her instincts were screaming. This wasn't just about money. It was bigger. More calculated, and Queen Camilla was caught in the middle. Back at Clarence's house, Camilla received a phone call. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But something made her pick up. Hello. Silence. Then a voice. Low. Familiar. Camilla. Her blood ran cold. Victor, it's been a long time. What do you want? He laughed. Soft. Almost kind. But there was venom underneath. I want you to remember what I told you. All those years ago, that you'd regret crossing me. You did this. The money. The setup? Prove it. Why? Because you humiliated me. Made me look like a fool. And now, the world thinks you're a criminal. How does it feel? Her hand gripped the phone. You won't get away with this, I already have. The line went dead. Camilla stood there, shaking. Rage and fear mixing together. She called Richard immediately. We need to go to the police. Tell them everything. About Hale. About the call. It's your word against his. No proof. Then we find proof. And for the first time since this began, Camilla made a decision. She wasn't going to be a victim. She was going to fight back. Claire sat across from Camilla again, but this time the atmosphere was different. The queen consort wasn't a suspect anymore. She was a witness. Tell me everything, Claire said. Camilla recounted the phone call. Victor's words. The threat. The admission. Richard handed over notes. Dates. Evidence of Hale's past investigations. His patterns of manipulation. Claire listened carefully. Her mind worked through the timeline. The charity event. Helen Marsh. The planted cash. The cryptic note. It all pointed to one thing. A carefully orchestrated frame. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Claire asked. I didn't realize it was him until last night. I thought it was just a mistake. A misunderstanding. And now I know he's trying to destroy me. Tom entered the room with a laptop. He set it down and turned it toward Claire. On the screen were financial records, wire transfers, bank statements. He traced the money, Tom said. £73,000 was withdrawn from an offshore account in Monaco 3 weeks ago. The account belongs to a shell company, owned by Victor Hale. Claire's eyes widened. So he funded it. And more. He's been paying Helen Marsh for years. Small amounts. Regular deposits. We think she's been working for him the whole time. As what? A plant? Exactly. She volunteers at multiple charities, high-profile events, gets access to donors, to royals. To anyone Hale wants to target, Camilla felt a chill. She seems so genuine. That's the point, Claire said. People like Hale rely on trust, on manipulation. He uses people's goodness against them. Richard leaned forward. So what's the next step? Claire closed the laptop. We bring him in. And we find Helen Marsh, but it wasn't going to be easy. Hale was in Monaco. Out of UK jurisdiction, extradition would take months. Maybe years. And without Helen, there was no direct link between him and the money. We need her testimony, Claire said. Without it, Hale walks free. Tom stood. I'll put out a warrant. Border alerts. We'll find her. But as the hours passed, it became clear that Helen Marsh didn't want to be found. Days turned into a week. The media frenzy grew. Headlines screamed conspiracy theories. Some defended Camilla. Others condemned her. The palace released a statement calling the accusations baseless. But public opinion was divided. Camilla barely slept. She attended her royal duties, smiled for cameras, shook hands. But inside, she was unraveling. One evening, she stood in the drawing room at Clarence's house, alone, a glass of wine in her hand. She stared at a portrait of Queen Elizabeth, strong, dignified, unshakable. What would you have done? She whispered. The answer came to her clearly. Elizabeth would have faced it head-on, no hiding. No running, Camilla. Set down the glass. She called Richard. I want to make a statement publicly. That's risky. Anything you say could be used against you. I don't care. The people deserve to hear the truth. From me, 2 days later, Camilla sat in a television studio. A single camera. A small crew, no script. Just her and the truth. The broadcast went live at 7 p.m. Millions watched. Good evening, she began. Her voice was calm, steady. I'm here tonight because I owe you an explanation. Not as queen consort, but as a person. A few weeks ago, I was given a bag of money. I believed it was a charitable donation. I was wrong. That money was planted by a man named Victor Hale, a man I refused to help 25 years ago, and he has spent years planning his revenge. She paused. Let the words sink in. I know how this looks. I know the suspicion, the doubt. But I stand before you today, not asking for your pity. I'm asking for your patience. For the truth to be uncovered, for justice to take its course. I have cooperated fully with the investigation, and I will continue to do so, because I have nothing to hide. Her eyes met the camera, direct, unflinching. To Victor Hale, if you're watching, know this. You may have wealth, you may have power, but you do not have integrity. And in the end, that is all that matters. The broadcast ended. Silence filled the studio. Then, slowly, applause. The crew, the producers, even the cameraman, Richard, stood in the corner, arms crossed, a small smile on his face. That was brave. It was necessary. That night, the internet exploded. Support poured in. Hashtags trended. People shared the video, analyzed her words, debated the truth. But more importantly, someone else was watching. In a small, flattened Dover, Helen Marsh sat on a worn couch. Her hand shook as she watched the broadcast on her phone. Tears streamed down her face. She had been hiding for weeks. Living in fear, Victor had promised her money, security, a future. But all he had given her was guilt. She picked up her phone, dialed a number she had memorized. Metropolitan Police. How can I help you? Helen took a deep breath. My name is Helen Marsh, and I'm ready to tell you everything. Helen Marsh walked into the police station just after midnight. Her coat was damp from the rain, her face pale, Exhausted, Claire Ashford was called in immediately. She arrived within 20 minutes. Tom was already there. Setting up the interview room, recording equipment, legal protocol. Helen sat at the table, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. Steam rose between them. "Thank you for coming forward," Claire said gently. "I didn't have a choice anymore," Helen replied. Her voice was small, broken. I watched her speech. Queen Camilla. She didn't deserve this. Then tell us what happened. From the beginning, Helen took a shaky breath. "I met Victor Hale 8 years ago. I was volunteering at a cancer research gala. He approached me after the event, said he admired my work, offered me money to help him with something simple. Just passing along information. Who attended which events? Who donated what? It seemed harmless, but it wasn't. No. Over time, he asked for more. He wanted access. Wanted me to get close to certain celebrities, politicians, royals. He said it was for business connections, networking. I didn't realize he was using me to gather leverage." Claire leaned forward. "And the money you gave to Queen Camilla?" Helen's eyes filled with tears. "He told me it was a legitimate donation. From anonymous donors. He said the Queen Consort would be honored to deliver it personally, that it would make the charity look good. I trusted him. I thought I was helping. When did you realize you weren't?" "When the news broke. When I saw the reports about an investigation, I called Victor. Confronted him. He laughed. Told me I was in too deep. That if I said anything, I'd go to prison too. He said no one would believe me." Tom spoke up. "But you're here now, because I can't live with this anymore. I've spent weeks hiding, scared, but watching Queen Camilla take responsibility for something she didn't do. It broke me." Claire slid a document across the table. "We need you to testify, officially. Everything you know about Hale, his methods, his contacts, his plans." Helen nodded. "I'll tell you everything." Okay, over the next 6 hours, Helen laid it all out. Names, dates, transactions. She provided emails, text messages, bank statements. Everything she had kept as insurance. Everything that proved Victor Hale had orchestrated the entire scheme. By dawn, Claire had enough to move forward. "We're going to issue an international arrest warrant," Claire said. "And we're going to make sure he answers for this." Helen looked at her with hollow eyes. "Will it be enough?" "It has to be." The warrant was issued that afternoon. Interpol was notified. Monaco authorities were contacted. But Victor Hale was already gone. His villa overlooking the Mediterranean was empty. Staff said he had left 2 days earlier. Private jet. No flight plan filed. No destination recorded, Tom said, staring at the empty villa on his laptop screen. Claire clenched her jaw. "Then we find him." But finding a man with unlimited resources and decades of experience evading consequences was nearly impossible. Hale had properties in 12 countries, shell companies in 20, bank accounts scattered across the globe. Days passed. Then weeks. The public outcry grew. People demanded justice, demanded accountability. Camilla remained composed. She continued her duties, attended charity events, met with officials, but privately she was frustrated, angry. The truth was out. Helen had testified, but Hale was free. One evening, Richard called her. His voice was urgent. They found him. Where? Geneva? He tried to access one of his accounts. Triggered an alert. Swiss authorities arrested him an hour ago. Camilla felt a wave of relief crash over her. Is it over? Not yet. Extradition will take time, but it's a start. The extradition process took 3 months. Legal battles, appeals, delays. But eventually Victor Hale was brought back to the UK, in handcuffs. Under heavy security, his trial was set for the following spring. Camilla attended the first day. She sat in the gallery, quiet, dignified. She watched as Hale was led into the courtroom. He looked older now, thinner. The arrogance was still there, but it was fading. Their eyes met for a brief moment. He smirked. She didn't react. The The prosecution laid out the evidence. Helen's testimony, financial records, the planted money, the cryptic note, the phone call. Hale's defense tried to argue entrapment, circumstantial evidence, but the case was airtight. After 2 weeks, the jury returned. Guilty on all counts: conspiracy, fraud, harassment, defamation. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in prison. Camilla stood and left the courtroom. She didn't wait to hear his reaction. Didn't care to see him taken away. It was over. Finally, outside reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. Questions shouted. She stopped, turned to face them, and spoke clearly. Justice has been served. Not just for me, but for everyone Victor Hale has harmed over the years. I hope this sends a message that no matter how powerful you think you are, the truth will always find you. That night, Camilla sat in her private chambers. A fire crackled in the hearth. A cup of tea steamed on the table beside her. Richard had called earlier, congratulated her, told her she had handled it with grace. But grace wasn't what she felt. She felt tired, relieved, and strangely grateful. Grateful for James Harrington, the guard who had done his job, who had reported what he saw. Even when it was uncomfortable, she made a note to thank him personally, and as the fire flickered and the night settled in, Camilla allowed herself a moment of peace. The storm had passed, and she was still standing. 3 months after the trial, life slowly returned to normal. But it wasn't the same normal. It was better. Camilla stood in a community center in East London. Children laughed around her. Volunteers served meals. The hospice charity she had tried to support that fateful night had received proper funding. Real funding, transparent. Legal Helen Marsh was there too, quietly helping in the kitchen. She had accepted a plea deal. Community service, probation, no prison time. The court had recognized her cooperation. Her remorse. Camilla approached her during a break. Helen looked up, nervous, ashamed. "Your Majesty," she said softly. "Helen." They stood in silence for a moment, the noise of the center around them. "I don't expect forgiveness," Helen said finally. "What I did. There's no excuse." Camilla studied her, saw the weight she carried, the guilt. "You came forward. You've told the truth. That took courage. It took too long, but you did it. That matters." Helen's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." Camilla nodded and moved on. She wasn't ready to forgive. Not fully. But she understood. People made mistakes, were manipulated, used. What mattered was what they did after. Later that week, Camilla visited Buckingham Palace. A private ceremony had been arranged. Just a handful of people. Palace officials. Security staff. James Harrington stood at attention, nervous, unsure why he had been summoned. Camilla entered the room. She walked directly to him. "Mr. Harrington, Your Majesty." He bowed slightly. "I wanted to thank you personally for doing your duty, for following protocol, even when it was difficult." James swallowed. "I was just doing my job, ma'am. You were doing more than that. You were upholding integrity. And because of you, the truth came to light." She extended her hand. He shook it, firm, respectful. "There are not enough people like you in this world," she said. "People who choose what's right over what's easy." James felt his chest swell. Months of guilt and doubt lifted. He had questioned himself so many times, wondered if he had made a mistake, caused unnecessary trouble. But hearing her words, he knew he hadn't. "Thank you, ma'am." The ceremony concluded. But before James left, Camilla handed him a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. To James Harrington. "With gratitude and respect, you reminded me that honor still exists." He carried that note with him for the rest of his career. The media eventually moved on. New stories, new scandals, new headlines. But the impact of what had happened lingered. Claire Ashford was promoted. Her handling of the case had been exemplary. She had followed the evidence, trusted her instincts, and brought a powerful man to justice. She thought about the case often. How close it had come to destroying an innocent woman. how easily truth could be twisted, buried. It reminded her why she had become a detective in the first place. To protect those who couldn't protect themselves, to uncover what was hidden, to fight for what was right. Months later, Camilla gave an interview. A journalist asked her what she had learned from the experience. She paused, thought carefully. I learned that reputation is fragile, that people will always doubt, always question. But if you stand on the truth, no lie can destroy you, not permanently. And Victor Hale, I don't think about him anymore. He wanted to ruin me, to make me afraid, but all he did was make me stronger. Do you regret refusing to help him all those years ago? Not for a second. The interview ended. But the question stayed with her. That evening, Camilla sat in her garden at Clarence's house. The sun was setting. Orange and pink streaked the sky. She held a cup of tea. Let the warmth seep into her hands. She thought about the past year. The fear, the suspicion, the fight. But also the resilience. The support, the truth. She thought about the people who had stood by her. Claire, even Helen in the end. And James, the guard who had simply done his job. And she realized something. This hadn't just been an attack on her. It had been a test. Of character. Of strength. Of who she truly was. And she had passed. Somewhere in a prison cell, Victor Hale stared at the ceiling. His empire was gone. His reputation destroyed. His freedom stripped away. He had spent decades manipulating people, using their trust against them, building power through fear and control. But in the end, it had all collapsed. Because he had underestimated one simple thing, the truth. No matter how well you bury it, no matter how much money you have, no matter how clever you think you are, the truth always finds a way. And as Camilla sat in her garden, watching the stars appear one by one, she understood that better than anyone. She had survived. Not because she was perfect, but because she had refused to give up. And that, more than any title or crown, is what made her a queen. The story had ended, but the lesson remained. Integrity matters. Truth matters. And in the darkest moments, courage is the only thing that can light the way forward. Camilla finished her tea, set the cup down, and smiled. She was ready for whatever came next.